Welcome to the Rich Relationship Podcast with Gil
and Renee, where amazing things happen. Our goal is to help build, repair, and restore healthy relationships.
Our primary focus is on the marriage relationship. However, the topics are applicable to the relationships that we value most. Remember, we're stronger together.
Let's grow. I need love, love. Oh, I'm not supposed to be singing that song.
Why not?
Hey, everybody. Guess what? We do need love, though, baby.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an important part of how we grow and thrive and change. Today is episode 18 of the Rich Relationships Podcast with Gil and Renee, and it's all about love. The title is called His Heart, Her Mind. And we're going to be talking about the application of the 5 love languages by Gary Chapman.
Coming up on this episode next.
Love, love, love. As I said it earlier, I think that's one of the things that's the one word that can silence a room and cause an uproar all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's one of those things that we all think we understand what it means. But I think about the last show we did, and I think that this show is so appropriate to follow.
Even the timing, yeah.
Oh my goodness. For me, that show was a game changer.
Right.
That topic of understanding how
emotional IQ.
If you didn't listen to last week's episode
17.
Episode 17 was upgrade your EIQ.
And we got actually a lot of feedback from people talking about it. That was actually
that they really enjoyed it. They learned a lot. It was very eye-opening. And that's really what we want to do. We don't want to just provide you with information. We want to really create conversations and bring up topics that are going to help us to not just to be hearers, but to actually know how to take what we read, take what we hear, and actually do something with it. And I think about for us, babe, like we learned about this, the 5 love languages. It's 25 years old.
Right.
They just redid it. And I love that it helped us to understand us. And I think one of the things that's important to understand about the 5 love languages is that it's not really designed to make you only focus on yourself. It's designed to help you better understand the people around you.
Right.
And the best way to do that is you have to first understand yourself and before you can understand someone else. And so for us, we started using this. We're in San Antonio.
Yeah, it was a while back.
Yeah, it's been a lot of years, and it's been very, very meaningful and very beneficial.
You know, there's a lot of books out there, obviously the Bible being the main one first and foremost.
Yes.
But there's a lot of books on relationships and love and marriage and all those things. But this one, when we read this book, and I mean, like you said, it's sold over 500,000 copies. And
right.
We're not going to dive into the book per se, detail by detail, but
you should read it.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to be more or less talking about the application of the 5 love languages and how we have actually used it in our relationship and to help us to identify some of the things. One of the things that I thought about when we first got married, we said this before, that I had to actually learn to speak your language.
Yes, you say speaking Renee.
Right.
And now I follow you and I say I had to learn to speak Gil.
Right. And I said that before I even heard of
5 languages,
Dr. Gary Chapman. But the one thing that I took out of that was there are going to be things that you are doing right already.
Exactly.
There are going to be some things that you may not be aware that you're doing correctly already in your relationships, except doctors and psychologists and professionals and
the
pastors and all those things. Those people are going to come along and maybe bring some clarity to what you already know. But then there are going to be times where you're going to learn something and it's going to be an epiphany for you. It's going to be like a
aha moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
The lights all just turned on.
and that's the good part about when you get new information, but more importantly is the application of the information that you
And we're really
get.
big on that. Our whole thing is you don't get credit for what you know. You only get credit for what you apply.
Mm-hmm.
Because wisdom is applied knowledge. You can be smart and not be wise.
Right.
And what I loved about the emotional IQ is because it was very liberating for me, because you and I were talking about it. And you know, what do you do with someone who has a low emotional IQ? And my response just came right out of my heart was, you give them space and you give them grace.
Right.
Because there's nothing you can do to change another person. All you can do is be aware of yourself, and then as you're maneuvering in relationships, it helps you to better understand how and why people behave the way that they do. But I think about me, I mean, at 52 years old, to me that episode really made me start going back and looking at why the 5 love language may not be working for some people.
Right.
Because if someone has a low emotional IQ, your love language, they could care less about
anything relating to it. And before we get into the 5 love languages, let's get everybody who may not be familiar.
Right. Let's bring them up to speed.
And we're just going to give you a quick summary of what the 5 love languages is all about. Again, it's Dr. Gary Chapman, and he wrote this book. He's a psychologist and doctor, and he wrote it after years and years of working with couples and coming up with the same pattern. He said, you know what? Let me just come up with a way to help people. Right. And basically his summary is there are 5 ways that people speak and get understanding when it comes to the emotional aspect of love.
Right, the way they feel love.
Exactly. So when someone was to say, I love the way he starts the book out when he says, you ever been in a relationship when all of a sudden you don't love me anymore? Well, it's not that they don't love you anymore. You're basically not speaking their language anymore. And the 5 love languages is words of affirmation, quality time, physical touch, acts of service, and gifts. And we're going to go
the giving of gifts.
And we're going to go into each one of the 5 a little bit, not digging deep in. And we highly, highly encourage you to make this book a part of your toolkit.
It should be.
Because that's the way we actually look at this. Is actually a toolkit that we actually use in our marriage, 30 plus years.
And even when we're working with couples.
Absolutely.
As well.
And when all the couples that we make this kind of a add to your tool belt, because you have to be equipped with information. And I love the Bible says there's nothing new under the sun, in Ecclesiastes. And that's not saying that there's no new information that anybody's going to come up with, but everything that is already out there has already been presented in a way, shape, form, or fashion.
You may come, what the Lord showed me was that it's the same information, you just may use a different vehicle to get it there, to deliver it. Because everyone has a different gift and bending. It's all going to come from the Bible, but everybody in a different season and a different time, they're going to have a different way to spin it to their generation, where it may be new to them.
Inapplicable. And I think about this from an aspect of when we first started dating. And this was so important to me, because you think about it, when you first start dating someone, you are hitting all of 5 of these without even knowing the person. You're going to be talking kind words to them, saying nice things
giving
to them,
gifts,
encouraging, giving them
touching them.
Obviously, you're going to be spending time. That's quality time together. Physical touch, you may be holding hands and those types of things. And acts of service, you opening their car doors and doing things for them, and all those things. So you're hitting.
So that's why they call it the honeymoon.
Yep, the honeymoon stage.
Because everything is perfect and everything is being hid and everything is great, and then life happens.
And I'll take people on a little journey with us. I think about when we first got married and not knowing this. So put yourself in a position.
Yeah, we were 21 years old.
Yeah, even if you're familiar with the book, let's just pretend that you're not.
Right.
And think about your own relationship that you have with your spouse now, or your current mate that you may be on that road to. And you think about the dating that you're going through and the time that you're spending together. You're hitting all of those things. And I think about us, we were hitting all those things for each other.
Right.
And then as you said it, after that honeymoon stage, that date of, let's just say, there is no quantifiable set number of years. Let's just average it out and say between 3 and 5 years.
Right.
That's when you are going past the honeymoon stage. All the newness of the marriage has worn off and the relationship is worn off. And now this is where the work starts. And I think about our own scenario and our own life story is when we discovered this book and we discovered the information. It was like, it made me look back.
And you should always look back.
Look back to understand, not to undo, or because you can't change anything that has happened.
You look back to understand, not to undo it, because you can't undo it.
No,
it's impossible.
But it was so pivotal to actually learn this. First, I had to learn my own language. So you have to learn your own language first. Which way which love language do you understand?
Do you identify with the most?
The most. And even looking back at your early stage when you were a kid, for me, my love language is quality time. Mm-hmm. That's my primary. And the book kind of goes into your primary love language and your secondary. But I would just say everybody hits all five, but
right.
You have a primary one that you actually communicate love the best and the most easy for you to
receive it.
Yes.
Because most people project, they speak to people in their language. Mm-hmm. But if that's not that person's language, then it's really like it's like dropping to the floor.
Right.
Because it's not, that person is not responding to it because that's not necessarily their language.
And now, can you think of a time when you were not speaking my language or I wasn't speaking your language?
I can give you a perfect example.
Okay.
I remember, and at the time I did not know my love language was words of affirmation.
Right.
I learned that much, much later on. Mm-hmm. When I remember we were in Minot. We were in North Dakota, and I would write you notes, and I would put them in your bag, and I would buy you cards, and I'd send you balloons, and I would just do all these things, and I would never forget you were about to be, because you would go out in the field, and you would be gone for so many days, and you would come back, and I remember I had all these little notes, and I had all these little cards, I put them in your bag, and I handed it to you, and I was just so excited, and I gave it to you, and you said, another card.
Wow. That's pretty bad.
I was like,
ouch.
My little feelings were so hurt.
Squashed.
I was like, I'm never giving him another card again.
And so you were projecting your love language
right.
onto me.
Right. I didn't know that. I just knew that it made me feel good to get a card mm-hmm. or a note. And a lot of times if you watch people, they'll tell you what their language is.
Right.
You have to watch what they do for you. Because that's more than likely. Even if they don't know their own language, people speak in their language.
Right.
So once you understand your language, and this is not from a selfish perspective that you're focusing, because the Bible says, love the Lord, love yourself, love your neighbor as yourself. Mm-hmm. So you got to really love God and love yourself first, because you can't give. We were talking about that at lunch. We had a lunch date today.
Yep, that was my wonderful. And that was quality time.
Yes, and that's why I did that.
Exactly, and even just like this past week, you did something. You did your 21 days of working out and eating raw and all those kind of things. And even preparing for this, I was making it a mental point, and we've been doing this we've been together for a while, and we've been actually practicing this, but I was intentionally making sure I was giving you encouraging words.
You were.
Throughout this week and those types of things to kind of encourage you to keep going and do those things.
Because it was hard.
And this is the thing that was important to me, because that's not my language, like you just so eloquently put in your story.
We were like 21, babe.
But still.
You didn't know.
Now I'm just scarred, y'all.
I'm sorry,
but that's okay.
baby.
No. But I think about when you just said that I was actually, words of affirmation is low on my love language list.
Right,
let's just say that. If you put this list in order,
right.
Mine at the top is quality time.
Right.
Yours at the top is words of affirmation. So if you're speaking words of affirmation, giving me those cards and all those things, and all of a sudden I don't respond, or I respond negatively in that aspect, it's going to can cause a problem.
It can.
But more importantly, I had to understand that it wasn't intentional.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware.
Yeah. And looking back on it, I wasn't mad at you. I just decided I was never going to buy you a card again.
Mm-hmm. and you know what? And that's not bad, because
it's not for you.
I really could care less whether anybody gives me a card.
And I think a part of then we start learning to ask each other. Just like me, mine is not gifts. I can remember you buying me $110 outfit, and we were airmen.
$110 pair of jeans and stuff like
that. It was a shirt.
And some jeans or something like
that. It
was
like a pair of khaki pants.
I'm speaking gifts to you now. That's one of the language. That was another example that I'm giving you a gift, and you're looking at this like, oh, thanks.
That's a lot of money.
Or you like, can I take it back?
Yeah.
I'm like, hold up.
I think I'm not going to. And you know what? And guess what? And I did. And what did you say? I'm never buying any clothes again.
Yeah.
So part of when you realize what doesn't work,
don't do it.
Stop doing it. And it's no need to be upset about it.
Because more importantly, in everyone's relationships, you want to be hitting it 100% of the time. So if you knew you had answers to the test.
Because you can't hit it if you don't hit it.
So That's physical touch. I'm gonna keep it clean, y'all. Oh wow. So
I'm sorry.
I just totally lost my train of thought right there, y'all. But I'm gonna bring it back, and I know where I was going with that.
I'm sorry.
Was that if you don't understand where you're actually going when you're speaking someone's language, you can totally offset everything that they're doing. You know, and so that's so important to kind of keep in mind.
Yeah, you have to think about what that other person needs versus not what you want to give them.
Correct. So if you want to make sure you're hitting those love languages every single time, you got answers to the test already.
Right.
So if I know your words are words of affirmation, I'm going to be giving you words of affirmation all the time, because when I do that, like Dr. Chapman says in his book, he uses the analogy of a love tank. Your love tank is going to be filled, you know, because I'm constantly giving you those words of affirmation and building you up and encouraging you and those types of things. And then I think your next one on your list will probably be physical touch.
It's touch.
Right. So in those orders, so we'll just say it's physical touch, words of affirmation, physical touch, quality time, acts of service, and gifts.
Right.
See,
gifts
I know
like way low.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know
so I know those things, but we tend to project, like you said, in our language. So if mine is quality time, just like you said today, we had a lunch date today, and we sat there and talked, and it doesn't matter.
And I wasn't on my phone.
Yes.
And I was looking at
because that is so important, that when you are spending quality time with someone,
that you are
undivided attention.
You are present.
They
know, should not have to say. I love that. You know, I love to watch the show with Chip and they have a restaurant.
One of those housing.
Yeah, and they inside their restaurant they make these little leather cases for people to put their phones in.
Okay.
So when they go into the restaurant, you can actually do the old-fashioned thing, and that's talk to one another.
Right. So in quality time, and we're going to cover a couple of these, and we have some ideas and some points and things like that, not only apply to our relationship, but quality time. If that's your primary love language, your spouse simply wants to spend time with you.
Yeah. Just sitting down watching a movie next to you without me having a notepad and a pencil and an iPad in my lap.
And more importantly, the conversation is there. Because if you just sitting there watching your favorite TV show, while that may be time you're spending together, I would be even more willing to say that is not quality time, because the TV is the main focal point, not me sitting down and talking to you and you talking to me and exchanging some information. So that uninterrupted time, like you said, with your phone, that you set your phone down, and that's something that we have been practicing in our own on a daily basis, that if I have something to say to you, and you're on your phone and I'm talking to you and I see I don't have your undivided attention, I'm going to just stop talking about whatever is on my mind.
And then that gets my attention. It's like,
and
I'm
then
sorry.
You'll say, whoa.
It's like, I'm sorry.
And then you'll either stop or you'll say,
hey,
give me a couple of minutes. Give me a couple of minutes. I'm working on something. And sometimes it takes priority. And I think about that. The first time you did that to me, it was in the recent past, but for some reason it just stuck out, because I think I had something really important to talk to you about or say something to you, and you were on your phone and you were scanning, and I was trying to talk to you, and you're like, yeah, and I just stopped, and you looked at me, and I was like, can I just, and you said, let me just finish this. This is really important. Not what you have to say is not. Let me finish what I have to do, because I have to get this out. And I said, okay. And I just went about. But when I walked away,
I was like,
hold up. You saying something else is more important than moi?
No, baby.
I know, but
and you think about years ago, I probably couldn't have done that.
But I had to stop and catch myself and say,
because you was getting your feelings in the wrong way.
Yeah, I was getting, my emotional IQ was low at that point. But what I did was I said, okay, this is a teachable moment. This is a learning thing. This is an application time where it's like, she's not blowing me off. She just has something that she needs to do. And then once you finish, we did come back together, and we talked about whatever it was at that particular time. But that was a actual application of a scenario of what quality time would actually look like when it comes
and
to
giving each other the grace not to blow the other person off, but to understand that sometimes, just like for you, you leave the house and work. I don't.
Right.
I have to do what I have to do in the midst of everything else. So I think sometimes when people don't leave the home and work, people think that their work, because the kids have no concept of me. They think that I'm just auntie, just jungle gym.
And so we talked a little bit about quality time. Let's jump backwards a little bit and talk about words of affirmation. So you said, that's your love language.
It is.
And so you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, I think even just growing up, I remember being a little girl and my mother would yell and scream and cuss. And I would ask her, can you just talk to me? Can you not? And I didn't know anything about the love languages, and I always noticed everything that people would say.
Right.
And I can tell you one of the things I love about our relationship, I cannot think of one time that you have said or did something to intentionally hurt me.
Right.
And that is why our trust is so high, because you have always been so conscious of my frailties. And so now that we are growing and we're learning more about emotional IQ and, and I notice you being more intentional about encouraging me, and I appreciate it, because no matter how long you've been married or been with someone, we should be, when we say together we grow,
right,
we want to grow together. We want to get better. And so to me, and the people that know me, I tell them that up front. I'm going to listen to every word you say, and I'm going to pay attention to it.
Right.
So please use your words wisely, because what you say to people can really do. And I know for me, it took years for all those negative tapes. I remember one Valentine's Day, you gave me this series by Joyce Myers. It was called Healing the Brokenhearted.
Right.
And you were like, Renee, I want you to listen to this because I want you to see where you've come from. And that really blessed my heart, because you're the closest person to me. And for you to be able to see change in me and to be able to give me a reference to show me where I was at, that really helped me.
Right. And so you even making a point when it comes to words of affirmation is that is a point of security too. When you communicate those things to someone, you're communicating security to them,
and
especially especially if they're words of affirmation, and that's very powerful. It's very powerful to them. It may not mean much to you if that's not your love language. It's not that you're trivializing it, but you just look at it from a standpoint of like, wow, okay, it means a lot more to you than it does to me. So and it doesn't kill you to give someone a compliment, especially if someone you really care about and you know that's their love language. Why would you not want to encourage them and compliment them?
Because you might have a low emotional IQ.
Right, and that's very true. But even if you have a low emotional IQ, this is one way to start building that up.
It is
being attentive to other people outside of yourself, and that's so
Right.
important. So those encouraging words under words of affirmation is very, very important.
Yes. And it's not lying. You want to make sure that the things you're saying are true, because it's not really affirmation if it's false.
Right.
You want to make sure that you're encouraging them, in the areas that you see them doing well. And then also kind of in the areas that that are their growth areas, just kind of push them along, cheer them on,
And like you said, just cheering somebody on. But so that says that you have to be very conscious of not just what you say, but how you say it too.
Exactly. Your tone.
Your tone is so important.
Your body language.
Because we're communicating all the time. So you have to be very conscious of how am I communicating, just as more importantly as what I'm trying to communicate. Because you want to send that one type of message.
Right.
Because people
you want to make
perceive
sure that what you're saying and your body language are sending the same message. Because if not, a person that their love language is words of affirmation, I'm very sensitive to when people are just blowing smoke up my leg. It's like, you did not mean anything you just said.
Right.
That was not sincere at all. Because I watch people, and so a part of it is making sure that your body language and your tone and the words that you speak are genuine and sincere, and that all those things are lining up. You're not, standing with your head
cocked to the side.
And it's like, you look so nice today.
Yeah, but you're not really meaning what you're saying.
I like what you have on.
Those two things don't line up.
It's like, no,
Yeah.
there's a contrast.
Yeah, the two things don't line up.
Yes.
So we're talking about the 5 love languages.
Yes.
His heart, her mind. his mind, her heart. I'm sorry.
Yes.
So that's the
And you know
of this.
why? And that was something you came up with a long time ago, and I think it's so true, because I think that women need to learn to use their mind, and men need to learn.
Not that they're
No, not that women are not
intelligent.
intelligent, not that women
Right.
are, but I think that we use our heart. We're more led by our feelings.
Right.
So that's just like we talk about, don't work on your legs if you got
At
big
the
body
gym.
and a lower body. You work on the part of your body that's your weaker part. And
Sure.
I can say, I can't speak for all women. I can say for me, I was a very emotionally driven person.
And you still are. That's
And
a
I
part of who
still
you are.
had to learn how to maneuver that and not allow it to get me into trouble.
Right, and the way we came up with that, his heart, is because of just that. Men, we have to get more in tune and in connection with our emotions, which is a heart matter, and that's why we kind of coined that term for this episode. And so we're going to talk one more of the love languages before we go to the next segment. Well, of his Got Wisdom, Got Questions, but acts of service.
Yes.
It's not being able to do for people what you want them to do for you.
No.
Acts of service is basically mean doing things for someone else because it benefits them, and it has
And not
nothing.
because I expect to get it back.
Mm-hmm.
That's a trade. That's not an act of service.
That's a transactional
Yes,
relationship.
it's not. An act of service is not, well, I'm going to do this because later on they're going to do this for me. You just got your reward.
Right, because love is a choice. It
It
shouldn't
is.
be something that you use
It
as
shouldn't
a
be a
weapon or
chore.
tool as to coerce somebody to do
Yes.
something for them.
Because that's manipulation.
And it's something, especially if you're in relationship, it's something that you have to decide to do on a daily basis. So if you know someone's love language is acts of service, I jokingly say this, and how that looks to you, where that may be low on your totem pole or your pole of love languages scale.
In your list of
Yeah,
priorities.
your scale. But it's just like, if I know I can make your life easier by just putting gas in the car, so
Yeah,
you
the
don't have to
gas
deal with that
fairy.
because
I
you don't
love the
like to do
gas
that.
fairy.
Yeah, the gas fairy.
Yeah. You already gas
Yeah.
fairy.
So, or the car wash fairy. So
Yes.
that's just an act of service,
Right.
because that's something that I can lift some of the burden off of you that you don't have to deal with or do. Not that you're not capable of doing those things, but you're thinking, how can I make my spouse or my mate's life easier? And doing and taking those steps to do it without anything coming back to you in the form of, I'm going to do this so I can get something else later. You don't want it to become a transactional relationship.
Right. Or tit for tat, Now, we do have a thing that we say that we try to outserve each other.
Right.
And I think that that's a healthy way of, keeping each other on our toes. It helps us to kind of work and not become lazy in our relationship.
Sure. So as we get into this, we're talking about the 5 love languages by Dr. Gary Chapman. We're talking more from the application side of it.
How do you apply it?
But we're going to take a quick pause because we're going to talk about Got Wisdom.
Got question. It's that time. It's that time.
So going into Got Wisdom, Got Questions, you want to start with the question? The
Yes.
question comes from Rhonda, and I'm going to ask it because I want you to answer it first.
Okay.
So Rhonda from Georgia had a question, and this is the question that she came up with. Why doesn't God stop us from loving people who are not good for us?
Deep question. Pause.
And I'm sure everybody has their own form of answer, but what would you say to that?
Well, God is not in the business of forcing us to love or not love people.
Mm-hmm.
That's why He gives us free will. He gives us choice. He gives us the Holy Spirit so that we can kind of know the difference between what love is and what love isn't. And I think my question is, if someone is not good for you, then they're probably not good to you. And we have to make sure, and I say it all the time, we need to love the people that love us back. We have to be careful about, because the Bible says, don't give what's holy to dogs, no cash or pearls before swine. I think it's important that I think sometimes as Christians we think that we're supposed to just be martyrs and we're supposed to be abused and we're supposed to be doormats. And that's not what the Bible teaches. So I think that we should love everyone, but we should not be in love with someone that doesn't love God and doesn't love themselves, so therefore they can't love us.
Right.
And so I think that if God made us not love people that weren't good for us, we would never learn what the difference between what's good for us and what's not.
Right.
And sometimes our greatest areas where we grow are from our pain. You know, what if God allowed those things because he knew it would make us better? It would make us wiser, and it would make us more dependent on him. Because I think that we should love people and trust God. And I used to trust people, and I think that we have to be careful about trust has to be earned.
Right.
And love is we should love everyone, but we have to make sure that the people that we are in love with are people that we can trust and that are trustworthy.
Sure. And I think to kind of add a little bit more to that is, don't look at it from an individual's perspective. Look at it from God's perspective. God loves everybody equally, regardless. Obviously, people do bad things and sometimes do bad things to other people, but that doesn't stop God from loving them.
No.
Unfortunately, you can get involved with people that you have those emotional ties to, and it can become very detrimental to not only to your emotional health, but your physical health sometimes, your mental health, your financial health, and those types of things. So, and that's where you have to, I think, use your mind in this instant.
Exactly.
Rhonda is a woman, so therefore I would say, just like we coined the term in the title of this message, his heart, her mind. This is where one of those times that, as a wise person said, when people show you who they are,
believe them.
You have to believe them, not what you want them to be or their potential to become, but exactly where they're at. So if they're difficult and challenging and they're not good for you, you have to sometimes listen to yourself and listen to the Holy Spirit on the inside of you saying, you may not want to go into this. So that's very, very important. So that's the God question. Do you have a God wisdom?
Yes.
Okay. What you got?
The God wisdom this week comes from me.
Okay.
And the wisdom is, we have got to put God first, because whatever we make first becomes our priority. And a lot of times in relationships, we think that we have to put our spouses first, our children first, our jobs first. And the truth of the matter is, whatever you make first is your God. And anything that you want to give up and you can't is an addiction. So I would say that we have to learn to make God and our relationship with him our priority, so that everything else falls in proper place. That's the wisdom.
So that's God wisdom, and that's God questions. So again, if you ever want to send those information or questions and wisdom into us, you can reach us at the website at richrelationshipsus.com, which is the website address. Or you can send us an email at richrelationships.us@gmail.com. Gil and Renee Beaver's over 30-year relationship is the genesis for the Rich Relationship Podcast, which is designed to empower individuals with the tools, principles, and the community needed to unpack ourselves, our past, and our preconceived notions associated with relationships.
Let's get empty and grow together so that our lives will be filled with love and healthy, rich relationships. Now let's go into our show.
So we're talking about the 5 love languages with Dr. Gary Chapman.
The application of the 5 languages. I stand corrected.
The application of it.
His heart, her mind.
You know, and just to kind of pull back a little bit, you know, so after 30 years of being married, this is one of those tools that we have employed into our relationship that helps us on a daily basis. And we want to just share that information with all the people who are listening to this episode. So we've been talking about it. We've covered 3. So we're going to hit the last 2, which is, you said it a little bit interesting enough, but this one is called physical touch.
Yes, physical touch.
Now, physical touch is just that. You know, when you're dating, you're holding hands, you're stroking each other's back, or you're just caressing each other, and those types of things. We're not going to even go down. We're not going to even go down the road of the sexual interaction because we kind of talked about that. And just on a brief note, our belief is sex should be held for marriage. So we'll just say that. But even going into the physical touch, you don't have to think that just because your physical touch with someone, with your spouse or your mate, that is leading has to lead to intimacy or a sexual interaction.
Right.
It doesn't.
No, it doesn't. I was just joking when I said that.
No, but
it was just funny.
I know it was. I know you were just jesting, but that's something to be important because it, especially from a male's perspective, if a woman has ever said, well, the only reason why you touch me is because you want to make love or have sex later, that can be kind of...
It cheapens the touch.
Right. You think it's ulterior motives. But if that's someone's love language, they're telling you, when you touch me, it makes me feel loved.
Right.
And that's what we want to do.
And, and it's funny when you think about, men thrive on respect and women thrive on love. When you think about the 5 love languages, there are languages that are more bent towards men and some that are more bent towards women, just because we're naturally different. And so I think a part of that is keeping that in mind, is that the other person is not you.
Right.
And you are not that other person. And so, again, once you hear this episode, maybe it will create some dialogue for you to begin to talk about, well, what are the things what do you need from me? How can I make you feel loved? And we would always ask Aaron, do you feel loved and accepted?
Right.
Because there's nothing wrong with just coming out and ask that question. Because there's a difference between being aggressive and being assertive. Being assertive means I communicate to you what I need from you. Being aggressive means I try to take something that you may not want to give me.
Right.
And there's a difference.
So even talking about this from the physical touch aspect, and this is a note that I wrote down that I'll share just like I wrote it down. Most sexual problems in a marriage have very little to do with the physical techniques, but everything to do with meeting the emotional needs of our spouse.
I just love you.
Because when you think about that, it's not so much what I do or how what I do makes you feel. It's more me trying to meet your need, trying to satisfy you from a love, emotional aspect, not from a sexual interaction aspect.
Yeah. And like when we talked about it before, making love is a place you go to, not something you do.
Right.
And when you think of it that way, it totally changes the framework of it becoming something other than just what it was designed to be, a way for you to connect.
Very much so. So that's physical touch. And then the last one we kind of talked about already was gifts. While gifts may not be everybody's love languages, every now and then you like to get stuff. Ain't nothing wrong with that. I'm just going to say.
Not. Yeah, everybody's different.
And gifts is just that. It's something that somebody physically...
It doesn't have to be expensive.
Yeah, and you can go ahead and say that.
It could be something... Now, you can always tell when someone's love language is not gifts, because what you give them matters.
But if someone's love language is gift,
you can give them a pencil, and they'll be so excited. You're like, oh my gosh, like, yay!
This is a custom made.
Yes.
And
isn't it funny though? Wouldn't you think that if it was someone's love language, that what you give them would matter? But it doesn't matter. When it's their love language, like Aaron's love language for me is gifts.
Right.
I can buy her some socks.
Yep, and that's all that matters.
I mean, anything, and that, so you just have to know how that person feels loved and celebrated.
And I would even say this as it pertains to gift, and I would be willing to say the most important gift that you can give your spouse, your mate, when it comes to this, is the gift of your time. Because when it comes to the time, that is something that we all get the same amount, the same quantity every single day, and you have to decide where you're going to disperse that time out to. And if you decide to invest it in someone else, and especially when their love language is time, gifts, when you invest that time as a gift to them, you're going to be definitely showing them how you feel and communicating love to them.
And to me, if I had to really summarize the 5 love languages, if you really think about it, there is one common denominator in all of them.
What's that?
All of them require that you be present and you have to give time.
Yeah.
So you can't say you love someone if you don't make time for them. Because in order to buy a gift, it takes time. In order to do acts of service, it takes time. In order to give them words of affirmation, so all of them require time. And so when we say we love people, but we don't make time for them, that's another one of those things that your actions and your words are not telling the same story.
Right.
And so when you say you love someone, just remember our most valuable resource, because you can't make more of it, you don't deserve it, you can't earn it, it's a gift.
Right.
And so we have to make sure that we use our time wisely and that we invest it in our relationships, because that's what's going to really, really last.
And you have to think about this, and I know we can go on and on. We love this topic, and it's been very instrumental in our lives, and we just wanted to take today's show and just to invest some of the information. If you're not familiar with the book, we highly encourage you to get it
and read
Dr. Gary Chapman's 5 Love Languages. You can find it on all your outlets and Amazon and all those places where you buy books. You know, we even have it in the hard copy and the audio. And we revisit this, you know, on a regular, continuous basis, because you got to continue to remind yourself of the things that you're doing to be successful in your relationship. And that's kind of what the 5 Love Languages is all about. And I wrote down here, it's been a great asset to our relationships, but if you don't take the time to apply the information and learn to how to apply it to your spouse and how I can apply this to you, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And as you grow and as you mature, it's not that your language changes, it's just that it becomes more developed. It becomes, as you mature, so does your language mature. And so where a card would have been fine when I was 20, now I like for you to physically say things to me.
Right.
You know, and so
in
I
my
think,
own words.
right. So I think, or like I said, of buying a car, I like when you've written me cards or written things. So to me, I think a part of you have to understand that's why you have to keep becoming a student of your spouse, because that person is growing and changing and becoming a better version of themselves, and you want to make sure that you're offering them the best version of yourself. And the thing that I want to really reiterate as far as the 5 love languages is that we have to make sure that our motivation is, in order to be understood, you have to first understand the people around you.
Yes.
And so the more you work on trying to understand you so you can understand how you are, your strengths, your growth areas, the better you're going to be in relationships to kind of pick out for people. It's like, hey, your love language seems to be quality time. It's like, well, what's that? You know, so it allows you the opportunity to help somebody who may not know about it, and you can share it with them. So if it's blessing you and it's helping you, then you can then share it with other people.
And in closing, I wanted to say the scripture that came to my mind for this was Ephesians chapter 4, verses 2 and 3, which it says, with all humility and greatness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit and in the bonds of peace. Our pursuit should always be unity in our relationships.
Yes.
You know, and that's so important to us to remember, because no matter what book you read, no matter what information you try to apply, if you don't have the right love aspect and the unity and the peace that you try to apply to the relationship, it doesn't matter.
And God has to be at the center of your relationship, because as humans, it's impossible for us to love the way God loved without God.
Right.
We can't love the way God loves without. In our own human ability, we can love selfishly. We can love as more like a demand, but we can't love the way God loves without God.
And so the way you love is by loving with the love of God, but also use the 5 love languages.
Yes, that applies.
We just want to share it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your investment in time. Remember to subscribe to the show and hit the notification icon to be notified when new episodes are posted on the podcast platform that you're listening from.
Or you can always find us on our website at richrelationshipsus.com or our YouTube channel, Rich Relationships with Gil and Renee. If you found this podcast helpful, or you think it could help someone that you know and care about, please pass it along and share it with them.
And also, you can always send your questions and comments to richrelationships.us@gmail.com. This is a weekly podcast, and the new episodes are going to be posted on Monday by 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Remember, we're stronger together.
Let's grow.